So I'm going to give a video presentation of a version of a talk that I'm going to give at the Digital Humanities 2026 conference in Korea, South Korea, in a few weeks. And I'm talking about carefully using big but intimate data. So start with some definitions. What do I mean by that big but intimate data? I was studying and writing a book about Reddit, and I believe Reddit is the most vital manifestation of the advice genre, including folks like Ann Landers and Abigail Van Buren. But today, we have relationship advice and Am I the Asshole, for example. And there, those forums hold the intimate conundrums of tens of thousands of people. They're discussed by hundreds of thousands of people on Reddit, and it's distributed to people off of Reddit and seen by millions of people on places like Twitter and TikTok and Instagram and podcasts and all over the place. And so I think scholars face a methodological and ethical challenge that scholars of Ann Landers and Abby did not face. And the reason I think so is that these might be called public, intimate, or quasi-sensitive disclosures. People share in public forums what would be sensitive in other contexts, situations and concerns about their health, work, and relationships. And these types of disclosures are not sensitive in a regulatory or institutional review board sense because the researcher is not interacting with these sources whatsoever. They're not human subjects. But reporting on these disclosures, I think, still merits some care. Because two things could happen, even if the researcher has no interaction with those sources. One, there could be consequential harm, that you bring attention to someone. Maybe they confess to doing something inappropriate or illegal that then leads to consequences for their family or their work or their legal standing. Or perhaps there's affective harm. Perhaps someone was disclosing something they feel insecure or they feel sensitive, and it's one thing to say it in a subreddit and it's another thing to see it elsewhere outside of that context. And so I want to be sensitive to both this consequential and affective harm. And this is basically the challenge. How do you do this? So imagine you had a Reddit post about a failed paternity test that actually turned into a infant swapped at the hospital sort of case. And you want to talk about this as a possible hoax in the context of hoaxes in the history of the advice genre going back hundreds of years. What do? Do you seek consent from that OP, the original poster, or do you freely use it? Well, if you seek consent, the OP, if they are, for instance, a hoaxer, they might not be very forthcoming or truthful or responsive. They've probably moved on from that account in any case and just aren't there. And the contact might be unwelcome, and that would stall the work. And if you just freely used it, I think you do risk potential affective harm, or maybe you're amplifying an already painful ordeal. Typically, in the advice genre, when people were studying and talking about conundrums that appeared in print, you could excerpt and discuss those cases freely. Never saw any hesitation about that. And when it comes to people using disclosures on public venues like Twitter and especially research, Reddit particularly, the most of the research tends to take the position that the data is already public. But this fails to remember the human behind online disclosures. And the fact that people, for instance, there is a study of people discussing mental health on Twitter, even though they were using pseudonyms and even though the researchers further disguised those sources, people objected and thought that was inappropriate, that their disclosures were being used in research. So I wanted to course a middle path, and I call it the care and selection and reporting. And it goes between these two extremes of thinking that all data is public and I can do whatever I want with it as a scholar, and that consent must be obtained from every single source. This approach complements ethically disguising sources and uses the ethical disguise at times when appropriate, but I also appreciate this is a valuable but error-prone technique, as I have found in research. People tend to slip up when they're ethically disguising their sources. So my framework for this book, Dear Reddit, Am I the Asshole?, being released next year, was to ask a number of questions. How old is the message? Is it older than 10 years, for instance? What is the identity of the original poster or OP? Were they using a pseudonym? Most everyone uses a pseudonym. Was it a throwaway? That's like a one-time pseudonym account. Was it a deleted account? Is the gravity of the disclosure mild, moderate, or major? Here I'm borrowing something from psychology, which talks about the significance of something happening in a person's life and how disruptive it could be. And did the OP engage via comments and post updates because people were interested in what was happening? And is the internet famous? Was it syndicated off-site? Is it in Encyclopedia Retica? Is it on Twitter? Is it on TikTok? Was it written about in news stories, which sometimes happens now? And so from these questions, I have a range of practices. Something of major gravity I tend to avoid or I allude to without excerpt or citation even. I just talk about it in the abstract. If it was moderate gravity but not widely distributed, I will disguise both the source and the prose. If it was an updated, old, throwaway account that was widely distributed and it's internet famous, I would feel free to excerpt it and cite the author, the OP. And if I significantly excerpted the prose, like generally I wasn't talking about people's conundrums, I was talking about the genre, but at the lead of each chapter I do talk about a particular conundrum, and I would ask those OPs for objections, but not for consent. And because of my research on how effective researchers are at disguising their sources when they want to do so, every time I used one of these sources, I tracked my treatment of it in a comment. This is an HTML markdown comment in the markdown in which I write. You could also do it in a marginal in a Word document, I suppose. But I would make a note of the case that I could remember how old it was, the gravity, was it pseudonym, was it a throwaway, was it deleted? Did I disguise the prose? Was it taken off-site and become internet famous? Did the OP engage with updates and did they respond to comments? If I contacted them, did they respond? And I might also have another sort of note. And this is an example, of one such thing where I'm saying, okay, the situation was a camping story, it was old, it was mild, it was a throwaway. Again, these never appear in the finished manuscript, but it allowed me to keep track of what was happening. So for example, when I think about the excerpts that I used in the leads of each chapter, I could be like, okay, this is what happened. And if I was actually disguising a conundrum, this is what it would look like in my footnotes. The bibliography, it'd say disguised OP, gaslighting, the general topic, and that it happened on Reddit. But note that I wouldn't include the date or the forum, because again, my research shows that makes it easy to find disclosures from research products like books and papers. I think the careful selection and reporting that I describe offers a way for scholars to use public quasi-sensitive disclosures by charting a middle path between the extremes of wantonly reporting disclosures as if it's all public and you can do whatever you want with it, and being inappropriately encumbered by the requirements rightly reserved for actual human subjects research. I look forward to any questions. Feel free to leave a comment.